course of time. 27 Chatur Yugas have already passed. Those upon whom you have decided are now gone, and so are their sons, grandsons, and other descendants. You cannot even hear about their names. Purport: during Lord Brahma's day, 14 Manus or 1,000 Mahayugas pass away. Brahma informed King Kakudmi that 27 Mahayugas, each consisting of the 4 periods Satya, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali, had already passed. All the kings and other great personalities born in those yugas had now departed from memory into obscurity. This is the way of time as it moves through past, present, and future. O king, leave here and offer your daughter to Lord Baladev, who is still present. He is most powerful. Indeed, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose plenary portion is Lord Vishnu. Your daughter is fit to be given to him in charity. Lord Baladev is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who hears and chants about him is purified. Because he is always the well-wisher of all living entities, he has descended with all his paraphernalia to purify the entire world and lessen its burden. Having received this order from Lord Brahma, Kakudmi offered obeisances unto him and returned to his own residence. He then saw that his residence was vacant, having been abandoned by his brothers and other relatives who were living in all directions because of fear of such higher living beings as yakshas. The last verse. Thereafter the king gave his most beautiful daughter in charity to the supremely powerful Baladev, and then retired from worldly life and went to Badrika Ashram to please Naranarayan. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 3rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Marriage of Sukanya and Chavan Muni. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamyam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapara Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So first of all, I'd like to ask for the blessings of all the Vaishnavas that I may be able to say something of value to you all, as also purifying to my own self. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining on this Tuesday to hear some Srimad Bhagavatam. So what we're listening to now, or what we're reading right now in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the story of Chavan and Sukanya. So Chavan was a muni, and Sukanya was a princess. And so, to make a long story short, Sukanya's father offered her to Chavan Muni to marry, but although he was a Muni and greatly qualified, he was very old, and so he asked the Ashwini Kumars, who are the celestial beings, to make him young again. So he took a dip in one lake, and he came out very young and beautiful and handsome, and Sukanya eventually married him. And then they had children. One of those children was Revata, I believe, and then his son was, Kukudmi was one of his sons or grandson, and then Kukudmi had a daughter named Revati, and so the story goes that Revati, we all know, is the wife, the consort of Lord Balaram. But how that happened was is what we're reading right now. Is that Kakudmi wanted a specific son-in-law to marry his daughter, Revati. So he went to Lord Brahma. So he had to go to Brahmalok to he wanted to ask him, like, what do you think about so-and-so person? So when he went to Lord Brahma was busy. He was watching some celestial dance, some entertainment or something. And so he told him to wait. His people told him to wait. So he waited a little while, but not knowing that the time in Lord Brahma's planet goes much, much faster in and whoever he was kind of thinking of to marry his daughter to, they had already died, and also their generations of future sons had also died. So Brahma laughed. It's described here. He laughed and saying that these people that you're actually going to ask me about, they're already dead. Their sons are dead, and their sons are dead also. So what you should do is you should marry your daughter to Lord Baladev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I just thought a little bit about this story and about how time works. Now, time is such an interesting thing because it erodes and it corrodes and it just it's a kind of depressing, actually, when you think about it. It just goes without anyone's stopping it. You can complain about it, you can do anything about it, but it just continues to go no matter what. Like we've seen in our own lives, like Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was asked by that yaksha, what is the most amazing thing? Like that the story when the Pandavas were out and they were drinking from this lake, and each Pandava had died, and now Yudhishthira was the last one. And the yaksha said, you can drink from this lake, but you have to answer my questions. And so he asked him a number of questions, and one of the questions was, what's the most amazing thing? And Yudhishthira Maharaj said, the most amazing thing is that we see everyone dying. A man sees everyone dying around him, but he himself doesn't think he's going to die. That's the most amazing thing. So, in our own lives, we see that time is just going on. Our parents, our grandparents, they're all getting older. They might not even be around, but we ourselves think we're going to live forever, and that's the characteristic of time. It just continues to go, and it continues to destroy everything. So I just wanted to look at a few verses that describe time. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, 30th verse, says, among the Daita demons, I am the devoted Prahlad. Among subduers, I am time. Among the beasts, I am lion. And among the birds, I am Garuda, the feathered carrier of Vishnu. So the Lord says here, I am of subduers, I am the time. Time subdues everything. We don't need to really meditate on that because we're seeing that, of course, when we're young, like I remember when I was younger, I didn't think about it at all. Like, oh, time. I mean, I'm young, I'm happy, I'm agile, I can move really nicely. And, but now as being a little bit, older now, things start to weigh on you a little bit more. You can't eat the same way that you used to be able to. You can't move the same way. You weigh a little bit more. So things are, time is weighing down on us, and it's as I said earlier, it's a little like worrying because you don't know how much time we in this life, we don't know how much time we have left. You can't guarantee the next second. You can't guarantee it. So, I mean, I will discuss this later about using time properly and to our advantage. Let's look at another verse. This is from Canto 4, chapter 24, text 56. Simply by expansion of his eyebrows, invincible time personified can immediately vanquish the entire universe. However, formidable time does not approach the devotee who is taking complete shelter at your lotus feet. Now, here's a point that also I wanted to make, that if one discusses the topics of Krishna, time cannot affect that person. So let's read about that. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:34, it is said, the Lord in the shape of the form of death destroys all a person's possessions. Mrityu sarva haraschaham. I am all devouring death. Everything in this material world is subject to perish in due course of time. However, all the strength of time cannot hamper the activities of a devotee, for a devotee takes complete shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. For this reason only is a devotee free from formidable time. The devotee is free from formidable time because he takes shelter of the Lord, who is time. Reading on, all the activities of the karmis and jnanis, which have no touch of devotional service, are spoiled in due course of time. The material success of the karmis is destined to be destroyed. Similarly, the impersonal realization attained by the jnanis is also destroyed in due course of time. So this is talking about the karmis and the jnanis. The karmis are working very hard for sense gratification, for economic development. So their struggle is against time, really. All these different things that are happening in this world, as far as how karmis in the sense of people who are not in the derogatory term for non-devotees, but in the term of people who are working towards sense gratification. Everything is destined to be destroyed because it's not connected with Krishna. No matter how much of a effort is made in something, if it's not connected to Krishna, if it's not used for the pleasure of Krishna, then it is a waste of time. Shrama eva hi kevalam, as it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So they're going to be baffled by time. And sometimes we see like this, people struggle so hard for some type of sense gratification, or mostly it is for sense gratification, struggling so hard to create something or make some effort in something, but when it's not connected with Krishna, it is really a waste of time. It really is. I mean, it's very sad to see that. That's why we strive to connect people with Krishna, or to share this message of Lord Chaitanya with others, because devotees should feel pained at seeing this, at seeing the wasting of time of others. Just like there's this story of Srila Prabhupada. He was on a morning walk, and I have my doubts about sometimes when devotees tell stories of Srila Prabhupada, if this is exactly how it went. But anyways, that's a side point. Let's hear the story. The story is Srila Prabhupada was on a morning walk. He saw some old men golfing, and he asked one of his disciples there, "What are those men doing?" He said, "Prabhupada, they're golfing." And Prabhupada was like, "What's that?" And he said, "It's a game, and you play it, and you have to hit the ball." And Prabhupada actually started to cry, because he said, this is what these men are doing at the end of their life. They're golfing, they're playing a game. Like, that pained him. So that's why devotees who were trying to spread the Krishna conscious movement, because it should pain us to see the plight of others who are wasting their time uselessly in all these other efforts, and not towards developing self-realization and Krishna consciousness. So that's a story, it tells a lot about Srila Prabhupada's, I mean, there's many stories of where Prabhupada was weeping in sadness for other living, for other people. Like, that's why he came, just this immense feeling of mercy and sorrow, and for the suffering of other living entities. So, and then the jnanis, impersonal realization attained by the jnanis is also destroyed in the course of time. Those who want to merge into the impersonal Brahman, they actually, after some time, they actually have to come back down, because that's not an eternal place to be. This is, they're only there as much, and then there's some boredom there, because the soul actually requires relationship. And if there's nothing there, if we just try to, merge into some impersonal form, then there's nothing there. So the gyanis have to ultimately come back down. Continuing to read the purport of that verse from the 4th canto. Unless one is fully situated in unalloyed devotional service, there's no guarantee of liberation, even if one is elevated to the heavenly planets or to the impersonal Brahman effulgence. As I said, one has to ultimately come back down. A devotee's achievement, however, is never lost by the influence of time. Even if a devotee cannot completely execute devotional service in his next life, he begins from the point where he left off. Such an opportunity is not given to the karmis and jnanis, whose achievements are destroyed. So the point here is that the practices of bhakti are accumulated in our spiritual bank account. They are not destroyed at the time of death. And if a devotee is not able to perfect himself or herself in that lifetime, then they're given another chance in the next life, even a better chance. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, Shuchinam Shimatam Geva Yoga Bhrishta Bhajayate, that the yogi who is a failed yogi, who is not able to finish his devotional service in that one life, he is given a birth in Shuchinam Shimatam Gehe Yoga Bhrishta Bhajayate, in a family of aristocratic persons, or in the family of devotees, in the of brahmanas. Aristocratic or a rich family, because there's no struggle for life. There's no struggle for the basic necessities. It's like already there, ready to go, and you can kind of continue your devotional service. And in the family of devotees, because of the mother and father are devotees, then the children who are yogi in their past life, they have a chance to continue their devotional service from a very young age. As Prahlad Maharaj has said, Komarat Acharat Pragyo, that devotional service should begin from a young age. So we should see this as a hope-giving thing, that in this life, if we are not able to finish our devotional service, there is no loss. There is no loss to what we have done. Every round we've chanted, every struggle for the regulative principles, every lecture we've heard, every floor we've mopped, every incense we've waved, this is all going into our eternal account. It is never going to be taken away, and that cannot be said about the karmis and the struggle they take on for sense gratification, and all the different things that they have do. Big skyscraper buildings and huge amounts of effort, huge amounts of money, all energy, so much energy wasted. Everything is going to be taken away at death. But for the devotee, it is not taken away. It is kept. It is kept. And I think that it's definitely hope-giving. Let's continue reading on. The bhakta's achievement is never destroyed, for it goes on perpetually, be it complete or incomplete. This is the verdict of all Vedic literatures. Suchinam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Bhrashto Bhajayate. That's the verse that I quoted from Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter. If one is unable to complete the process of Bhakti Yoga, he is given a chance in his next life to take birth in a pure family of devotees or a rich family. In such a family, a person can have a good opportunity to further progress in devotional service. When Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, was instructing his assistants, he told them not to approach the devotees. The devotees should be offered respect. He said, but do not go near them. Thus, the devotee of the Lord are not under the jurisdiction of Yamaraj. So Yamaraj, the Lord of death, when someone dies, the Yamadutas come to take that person's soul to Yamaraj to be judged according to what their activities were, and mostly sinful activities. But the devotees, Yamaraj instruct his Yamadutas, this is probably referring to the story of Ajamil. He told them, what happened was that the Yamadutas came to take Ajamil, and the Vishnu Dutas also came, the messengers of Lord Vishnu, and they told the Yamadutas, you cannot come near this man. Don't touch him. You need to go. And the Yamadutas went back to Yamaraj, and they were baffled. They were saying, they were basically like questioning their whole being. They were saying, this guy was sinful. We went to him and we were not able to take him. Well, what is this all about? So Yamaraj explained to them, you cannot go near a devotee. He said the name of Narayan at the end of his life, and he was given a second chance at life to perfect his life. So the devotees are not subject to the Yamadutas. It even said if one wears a tulsi mala, that the Yamadutas are scared. They don't even come near. If one is wearing tilak, the mark of Lord Vishnu, the Yamadutas don't even look at that person. So that should give us also some hope that these different practices that we do in devotional service, they're not just some ritualistic thing. This is for one, for pleasing the Lord, but also for our own protection. Reading on, thus the devotees are not under the jurisdiction of Yamaraj. Yamaraj being the Lord of death. Yamaraj is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he controls the death of every living entity. Yet he has nothing to do with the devotees. Simply by blinking his eyes, time personified can destroy the entire cosmic manifestation. But he has nothing to do with the devotees. This is like just underscoring the amazing position of the devotees. We shouldn't take this position as devotees lightly. This is such an amazing, rare thing to be connected with Krishna consciousness, to be a devotee of Krishna. This is a very rare thing, actually. Like, think about in the amount of people we have in the world, how many are devotees? And of the devotees, how many are very serious devotees who are striving to perfect themselves? It's a very rare thing. But even devotees in general, it's just a very rare thing. And it says here, Yamaraj has no jurisdiction. Time personified with a blinking of his eye can destroy the whole cosmic manifestation. But he has nothing to do with the devotees. Reading on, in other words, devotional service which is rendered by the devotee in this lifetime can never be destroyed by time. Such spiritual assets remain unchanged, being beyond the influence of time. Spiritual assets. It's such a great term. This spiritual life that we are performing, it's an asset to us. Like, what is an asset? An asset is something that pays you. It's not that you pay it. Like we see in like normal life, in business, an asset is something that that continues to pay you, like something like real estate. Real estate, if you own real estate, it's going to pay itself off in the end. It's an asset. It's not a liability. It's not something that you have to pay towards. So spiritual assets are paying us. Of course, we don't do that for that reason, but it will never perish. It is going to continue to stay with us, unlike material assets. So such spiritual assets remain unchanged, being beyond the influence of time. So let's look at another verse. Another very famous verse is in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, third chapter, 17th verse. You might know the Sanskrit because it's very, Prabhupada quoted it a lot. Ayur harati vai pumsam udyanastam chayanaso tyasyaharte yat shanonita uttama shloka vartaya. Translation is, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all good personality of Godhead. It's a beautiful verse. The sun is always rising and setting, and every rising and setting, it's decreasing the time, it's decreasing the life of everyone. Like we see the sunrise and the sunset, so beautiful, beautiful sunrise, beautiful sunset. But this verse is saying it's actually decreasing the duration of life of everyone. It's actually not like for someone who is not a devotee, who is not utilizing their time for discussing the topics of Uttama Shloka, then this rising and setting of the sun is actually a depressing thing. It's actually decreasing the life. Let's look at the purport. This verse indirectly confirms the greater importance of utilizing the human form of life to realize our lost relationship with the Supreme Lord by acceleration of devotional service. Time and tide wait for no man. So the time indicated by the sunrise and the sunset will be uselessly wasted if such time is not properly utilized for realizing identification of spiritual values. So time is not waiting for anyone, as I've said in this class, but we have to use our time properly. If we're not using our time for self-realization, then time will decrease. The duration, the sun will decrease the duration of our life. But if we use this time and if we utilize our time for discussing the topics of the Lord, then actually our time is being used in a proper way and is not decreasing our life. It is actually creating more assets, spiritual assets for us. Let's continue reading. Even a fraction of the duration of life wasted cannot be compensated by any amount of gold. There's a funny story about this. It's not really funny, but it's a story that Prabhupada tells about a really rich man who was dying, who was on his deathbed. And he told the doctor, I will give you millions of dollars. I just need one more day. I need to fix the wedding of my daughter. I've not done, I've some work left. I need just one more day. I'll give you millions of dollars. And the doctor said, sir, I can't give you even 1 second. You can't get 1 second back, even for millions and millions of dollars. It's a very telling story because, we have so many desires of doing different things in our life. Now, how many of those desires are based around Krishna? I know for me, a lot of them are not. And so this should be a lesson that, okay, we may have so many desires, but at the end of our life, what is going to be important? Will it be important how much money I accumulate? No, because you come with nothing and you leave with nothing. You don't leave with anything you have. You're born with nothing. So that should always be in the back of our minds that, okay, we might have so many material desires, but we should try to devote a lot of our time to our spiritual desires. Let's continue read on here. Human life is simply awarded to a living entity so that he can realize his spiritual identity and his permanent source of happiness. A living being, especially the human being, is seeking happiness because happiness is the natural situation of the living entity. But he is vainly seeking happiness in the material atmosphere. Yes, we know that happiness is the right of the living entity. We are all striving for happiness. We're all striving for pleasure. It's our right. But it's where we are looking for that happiness is where we go wrong. When we're looking at vainly in material things, then we're going to be frustrated. But if we look for it within, if we look for it in Krishna, then that is the right source and the right directive for our search. A living being is constitutionally a spiritual spark of the complete whole, and his happiness can be perfectly perceived in spiritual activities. The Lord is the complete spirit whole, and his name, form, qualities, pastimes, entourage, and personality are all identical with him. Once a person comes into contact with any one of the above mentioned energies, of the Lord through the proper channel of devotional service, the door to perfection is immediately opened. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord explains in the following words: endeavors in devotional service are never baffled, nor is there any failure. A slight beginning of such activities is sufficient even to deliver a person from the great ocean of material fears. So this is just such a great point. It's never baffled, and nor is there any failure. In this life, in material efforts, there's always the fear of failure. No matter what we're doing, like if we have a job interview, or if we have a some business venture, or anything it may be, there's always the question, there's in the back of our mind, I'm going to fail in this. I might fail in this. But with spiritual activities, there is no question of failure. Think about that for a second. Whatever spiritual activities you perform, they're always going to be successful, because it's connected with the Lord. It has nothing to do with material life, or the material world even. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, there's that verse that Prabhupada is explaining here. Any little endeavor in devotional service can help one and can stop one from from feeling the greatest type of fear. Just as the story of Ajamil, even the slight name of Narayan that he said helped him immediately to have a second chance. We see that in many other stories. Like any little effort that's made in devotional service can help one. It can give one even just the greatest benefit. Like we see so many different stories of devotees, like, they may have been devotees during Prabhupada's time, and then after Srila Prabhupada left, they left Krishna consciousness. And then when they were dying, devotees somehow appeared, there and helped them. They died with kirtan, or they died, even one of them, I think maybe it was Sudama or something. He said he was dying and he just saw Prabhupada, and he said, Prabhupada's here. And Prabhupada came at the time of his death. That's what the devotees who were there during his, when he was leaving his body. So any little amount of devotional service can save one from the greatest fear. So in conclusion, I'd like to just say that we shouldn't have a mentality of all or nothing in devotional life. Like sometimes we have this conception of all or nothing. Like I either want to do everything correctly, or I'm not going to do it at all. This is like a very narrow-minded vision of devotional service. Like we should strive to do as much as we can according to our capacity. Like if our capacity is a certain amount of devotional service, or a certain amount of rounds, or like, okay, do that much, but do it with all your heart, and then try to increase it as much as you can. Don't be like, okay, if I can't reach 16 rounds, then I'm not going to do it at all. Like that is a very narrow way to look at it. We have to just we don't know the benefit devotional service is giving us. That's what this whole verse is underscoring, the benefit of devotional service. I know that it was more about, Revati and her marriage to Lord Balaram, but I just wanted to just talk more about time and how much little time we have and how beneficial devotional service is to us, that it will not decrease the duration of our life. It will increase it because we are connecting it with Krishna and it is part of our spiritual assets. We are increasing our spiritual assets. So I request all the devotees here, please try to increase your spiritual asset. Don't try to increase your material asset. Of course, we are, some of us are grahastas and we have to, economic development and sense gratification. We do those things as well, but our focus should be in increasing our spiritual assets. So thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or comments, I'm going to open it up now for that. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Namarasa Prabhu. Dandavat pranams.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for such an enlivening class, Shastra-filled and very passionate.
Thank you.
And I had two questions, and I apologize, they're a little more technical.
Sure.
But in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that is the first time that we hear that, yes, any work or activities done in devotional service or related to Krishna is not lost. And you touched upon this. But you mentioned that it's not the case for the Gyanis. But the Gyanis are also transcendentalists. And Prabhupada does say in the purport of 6.4 that any activity with the goal of liberation and self-realization is considered auspicious activity in the sense of, you can say, spiritual advancement. So could you comment on that? Because the Gyanis, while not in full realization or the goal of having transcendental loving service to Krishna, are still performing spiritual activities with the goal of, say, the liberation and self-realization, which again, I would assume is also not lost. And even from a practical standpoint, we could maybe see that there are people who have a very Gyanik approach to life, which we could assume from their past lives. So I would assume that whatever the Gyanis do also they carry forward and is also not lost. Could you further expound on?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. The Gyanis, yes, what I was referring to, which Prabhupada was referring to in that purport, was the Gyanis who want to merge into the impersonal Brahman. They're the ones who have to ultimately come back down. But if a Gyani, in what you're talking about, if a Gyani who ultimately goes toward devotional service, they'll end up there in devotional service through their Sankhya is like that. They're empirically going towards ultimately to devotional service. So, but the Gyani that I was referring to are the ones who go the other direction into the impersonal feature of the Lord. They're the ones who ultimately have to come back down, who their efforts are baffled because of the lack of personality that they actually crave. We all have craved the personality, but when they want to go towards the impersonalist, then they ultimately have to come back down. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I agree with your point that yes, the Gyanis who are going towards liberation and who ultimately are directed towards devotional service, maybe not in this life, but in future lives, they are, yes, their efforts are not in vain because they are going towards the devotional path. And sometimes even the devotional path, as you said, some devotees are even like more in that Gyanic way. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I agree with what you were saying.
Thank you so much. I understand perhaps your clarification makes more sense that the ultimate goal they're not reaching, but any spiritual advance that they do make is not in vain, but ultimately in the context of the highest realization they are not receiving, so they'll have to come back down.
Correct.
My second question, and again, I apologize to be so technical.
No, that's okay.
But we do often hear this whole concept of the spiritual bank account,
Right.
but that doesn't make much sense because from a practical standpoint or logical standpoint, we're already full. We have our srup, we're with Krishna in the spiritual world. We're just in this material state because we've decided to turn away from him. And we're in this kind of, I'm going to say dream state, but in forgetfulness. So there's no such thing as needing to build more spirituality. We're already full. It's just covered. And so in my mind, it would make more sense that whatever devotional service that we do, it's not that it's increasing the spiritual bank account, but in one sense, it's chipping away at that covering. So you're fully full. But what's covering that $1 million that you have in your bank account is some sort of illusion covering that's now allowing you to shine through. So what the service is doing is actually chipping away at that covering so that that spiritual nature is shining through. But, you know, I would love if, since you use that in that context, to just explain more, or I guess if you agree, that's just more of kind of a metaphor in that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing that spiritual bank account, and I'm sure we all have heard in different classes. And I like that point you made about it's chipping away, but also I've read like, for example, the Cowherd Boys. It said that how did the Cowherd Boys become the associates of Krishna? And it's described the word heaps and heaps of spiritual activities. There's a Sanskrit term that was used by Srila Prabhupada. If anyone knows it, then you can put it in the chat. But he actually says that they have performed heaps and heaps of pious activities to become the friends of Krishna. So I don't know exactly how to answer your question, because that's a very good question. It's also technical, but also this language is used by Prabhupada as spiritual assets and heaps and heaps of pious activities. So it is about revealing one's own. It's about revealing chipping away at what's already there, but also the like that word accumulation and heaps, like those word heaps is actually his word as well. So I don't know how to answer that question. It's a great question, but I mean, that's what I can, that's from what I've read, I can comment on. But great question.
Thank you so much. I guess just to add, that's where it's a little confusing.
Right.
And with Prabhupada's statement that they've done heaps and heaps of, auspicious pious activities, Krishna's Cowherd Boys. But technically, from, say, one perspective, the philosophy that we embrace is that our srup is already determined. We already have our srup. So you didn't have to do anything to be that Cowherd Boy. You already are. And in one sense, if you fall or in this illusion, you just forgotten it. And then you're just chipping away at that illusion. So what pious activity, unless so it's just an interesting concept. So thank you.
This goes all back to the debate of the fall of the jiva. I don't know if you're familiar with that. There was a debate in the 90s regarding if we fell from the spiritual world, or that we were never there to begin with, because Prabhupada actually says both things. That we were not there with Krishna to begin with. We were in what's called the anadi, is the eternally another place, and then we fell from there, or that we fell from the spiritual world. So I think you should it's a very important topic, and also interesting to read up on different papers that devotees have written on both sides, because Prabhupada did just say both sides. Some say he said one for simplifying what our situation is. Okay, we were there with the Lord, but then also in the Bhagavad Gita it says that one who attains the higher realm, they are never able to fall down from there. So how can we say that we fell down from the spiritual world? How are we there with Krishna and then we came down here? Doesn't make any sense, because Bhagavad Gita says you can't. Once you're there, there's no falling. So I urge all the devotees to look into that also. And Athena, thank you for bringing that up. I think I can send you some papers that devotees have written about it. But it looks like we are out of time. Okay, Bhakti Center writes, Srila Prabhupada in the chat, Srimad Bhagavatam, where he mentions heaps of pious activities of the Cowherd Boys. Thank you for that. So yeah, thank you, Athena. Appreciate it. Great discussion.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Does anyone have anything else, or are we out of time? Okay.
We could say how wonderful is Krishna.
How wonderful is Krishna.
Because he gives us that opportunity to counteract our ridiculous mistakes in such a powerful way, even with a small effort. How wonderful is Krishna.
Jai. Thank you, Haripurush Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Or Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. We can end here.
Say that again, please.
Pray now.
Yeah.